At midnight, I heard my daughter talking in the baby monitor, but her baby had died 2 years ago. I sat up in the dark, the kind of dark that hums with memory. The house was still. Even the clock seemed to breathe softer. Before I go on, if you can sit with me in this tender story, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, so I know who is keeping me company tonight. I want to take your hand before we walk any farther. I will go slow. I will be gentle. This is not a ghost story. This is a love story about grief and about what we do at midnight when our hearts ache most. The baby monitor was old, the kind with a little crackle, the kind that remembers the shape of a voice. I kept it in my nightstand like a small box of secrets. That night, it woke me with a soft buzz, and then I heard my daughter's voice, steady, tired, tender. She was speaking to someone she could no longer hold. "Hi, my sweet girl," she whispered. I pressed my hand to my chest and listened. "If you are here with me, listening in your own quiet room, I want you to know you are safe with me. We will not rush this. We will not turn away from the truth, but we will not push it too hard either. We will let it sit with us, like a guest at the table, and we will make room." 2 years can be both long and short. Long enough for seasons to pass, short enough for pain to still wake you like a tap on the shoulder. In the day, we carried on. We cooked, we worked, we said we were fine. But in the night, love found a small doorway. The old monitor made a path between rooms, from a heart that could not speak in daylight to one that could listen in the dark. I am a mother, and my daughter is a mother too, even now. We lost our little Rose, and the world did not stop, though our house felt like it had. I will tell you what I heard that night, and what it opened in us. I will tell you how we learned to be kind to our grief, how we learned to pour tea at midnight and keep a small light on in the hallway. If you are holding your own ache, pull your blanket close. Breathe with me. We will do this together. This story is about love that does not end, a voice carried over a thin wire, and the soft courage it takes to answer it. Stay with me. We are not alone. My name is Ruth. I am in my early 60s, and I have a soft voice people say sounds like late evening. I moved into my daughter's house the week after her baby was born. I came with 2 suitcases and a basket of soups, telling myself I would stay for a few months. I said I would help until they found their rhythm, then I would go home. The house is small and kind. It sits on a quiet street where the trees meet their branches over the road. The front room has 2 windows that love the morning. The kitchen is in the middle, with a kettle that hums and soft light on the table. Down the hall, near the end, is the nursery. The nursery had pale curtains with tiny dots like little stars. There was a rocking chair with a smooth, curved back. A soft yellow lamp sat on a small table, and when it was on, the room glowed like warm tea. The baby monitor receiver sat on the dresser, white and small, with a little green light that meant, "I'm listening." I remember those first days with our Rose. We folded tiny socks that looked like they belonged to a doll. I learned again the weight of a newborn head in the crook of my elbow. Sun hit the laundry line, and the little clothes moved in the breeze like bright flags. Rose made small sounds, like birds when their nests are still being made. There were moments that live in me still. Mark held her and whispered jokes as if she might laugh back. Hannah would lean her head on my shoulder while Rose took a nap on her chest. I stirred soup and sang the old songs I used to sing when Hannah was little. "You are my sunshine," I would hum, slow and low, because I had no high notes left in me. At night, the baby monitor kept us company. The bass in the nursery watched over the crib. The receiver would sit by my bed or in the kitchen while I chopped vegetables. I liked the soft crackle, the way it said, "She is breathing. We are here." Technology simple enough that even I could trust it. I had not planned to stay long. I was going to help Hannah learn the small tricks of baby care, and then I would pack my bag and kiss them all and leave them to their new life. But life does not ask us what we plan. Sometimes it turns without warning, even when the house feels safe and the lamp is warm. We lost Rose in her sleep. It was a quiet afternoon, and the shadows were gentle on the floor. One moment there was the soft rhythm of a baby resting. The next, there was stillness that did not make sense. We called for help. We did what everyone does when the world breaks. We stood in the doorways and held our breath and waited for someone to tell us what to do. I remember that day in slow motion. I remember the ambulance lights outside like something from far away. I remember Mark's hands shaking when he tried to make tea and the cup tilted and spilled. I remember Hannah's face, empty and full at the same time. I remember a voice saying, "It was not anyone's fault." And I remember hearing the words and not believing them because my body wanted a reason. The doctors were kind. They spoke softly. They said these things can happen. They said sometimes there is no answer, not the kind that takes away the ache. They said there was nothing we could have done. We nodded. We did not take in all the words. Our hearts could not. We had a small goodbye. There were white flowers and a hush over the room. A few close friends came and stood with us. There were no speeches, just hands on hands and quiet. The day moved like a slow river. Then it ended, and we came home to a house that knew what had happened. After that, life became a list of small tasks. I cooked soup because soup was something I could do. Hannah went back to her work at the kitchen table, not because she was ready, but because she wanted to feel useful. She said, "It helps to click and type." Mark went back to work sooner than he wanted. He stared at his shoes at dinner. He ate, but I do not remember the taste of our meals then. The nursery door was closed most days. Sometimes Hannah would stand with her hand on the knob and then step back. I understood that the room had become a kind of shoreline for her. She could go near it, but not into the waves. Once, she opened the door just a little and peered in like she was checking on someone sleeping. Then she closed it again. We unplugged the monitor and put it away. I placed the small receiver in my nightstand drawer, wrapped in a handkerchief as if it could feel cold. I could not throw it out. It had held our days. It had carried her breath. It had been a witness. I tucked it beside some old photographs and a folded letter and closed the drawer. The house grew quiet in a new way. The silence felt heavier, like a full coat you can't take off. Birthdays came and went. On the first birthday, Hannah and Mark lit a candle on the back steps at twilight. We did not sing. We held hands and watched the flame. Holidays were softer, too. We chose small meals. We said yes to less. We kept close. Neighbors tried to be kind. They left casseroles on the porch and notes under the mat. Sometimes I opened the door to find flowers in a jar. People crossed the street when they saw us, not to avoid us, but because they were careful. When we passed them later, they would nod and put their hand over their heart. I saw the courage it takes to say nothing and still say, "I'm here." I met our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, during one of those weeks. She brought a lemon cake and did not stay long. "For your tea," she said. I said, "Thank you." She touched my arm, and that was enough. We did not need big words. We just needed to know we were not invisible. Life after a loss becomes smaller, then wider, then smaller again. We learned how to walk in a house with closed doors. We learned which drawer held the spoons and which held the things we could not talk about. We worked, we slept, we cooked, we cleaned. We checked the mail. We stood at windows and watched the weather. We kept the hallway light, just a little for comfort. Mark did not talk about his feelings much. He would sit at the end of the table with his hands pressed together. He asked about the news or the grocery list. He would say, "Do you need anything from the store?" And I knew he meant, "I wish I knew how to fix this." Hannah moved around him like a gentle stream, not too close, not too far. They were careful with each other as if words were glass. Sometimes, after dinner, Hannah would start to clean every surface in the kitchen. She would wipe the counter twice, 3 times, then fold the towel and place it exactly. I would say, "Come sit," and she would say, "In a minute." After a while, I would put the kettle on. The sound of water helped us. It filled the air with something harmless. We did not speak much about Rose by name in those first months. We would say the baby or that day, and our eyes would meet and look away. I found that I did not know how to ask without opening something that might spill and never stop. When Hannah was ready, she would bring a small memory to the table. "She smiled in her sleep," she said once, very quietly. I nodded. "She did," I said. I carried my own quiet story inside me. Many years ago, before Hannah was born, I was pregnant for a short time. It ended early. We did not have words like we do now. People said, "You'll try again," and we did. I did not tell Hannah about it when she grew up. It felt like an old room inside me with a door I had not opened in a long time. I thought in those early weeks after Rose about telling Hannah. I would stand at the sink and think, "Today I'll say it." And then I would hear her in the next room, moving the chairs back in place, and my courage would fall away. I did not want to add weight to her arms. I told myself it was not the right moment, and then the moment slipped, and I stayed quiet. The baby monitor slept in my nightstand, but I knew it was there. Sometimes when I could not rest, I would slide the drawer open and look at it. It is a strange thing, how an object can hold so much. I would touch the button that no longer glowed and picture the little green light. I would remember the soft crackle, the sound like faraway rain. As months turned to the first year, we found a shape to our days. Mornings were practical. Tea, toast, emails, lists. Afternoons were slower. Sometimes I would pick fresh herbs from the small garden out back and bring them in just to breathe their smell. I learned the timing of the bus that passed at 3. I learned the sound of Mark's car at the corner. On Sundays, we did small chores. We changed sheets and opened windows to let the air move. We watched the neighbor's cat sit on our fence and blink. We were gentle with each other. If someone needed silence, we gave it. If someone needed a hand, we gave that too. We learned to ask, "Do you want company?" And we learned to answer honestly. Sometimes I would see Hannah at the end of the hall, standing by the nursery door again. She would stand straight, her shoulders high, as if to hold herself up from the inside. Then she would turn back to the kitchen and say, "Do we have lemons? Or did we pay the gas bill?" And I would follow her lead. We talked around the room that used to hold the crib. We walked around it too. There were small signs of rose left around the house, and we did not rush to gather them. A tiny hat in a basket by the couch, a lone pacifier in the laundry room, a card in the mail with a little bear on the front that came late and sat on the shelf until it felt safe to put it away. We did not plan it this way. It was just how it happened. When our hands were ready, they reached. When they were not, they rested. People asked sometimes if we wanted to go away for a few days. "A change of scene might help," they would say. We thanked them, but we stayed. The thought of packing a bag felt like a mountain. We had everything we needed right here. Tea, a couch, a hallway light, each other. The world could wait. I began to take short walks in the early evening. I would go up the block and back, slow and steady. I looked at yards, at the colors of porches, at the way the sky turned soft. On some nights, I would meet Mrs. Patel at the corner. She would say, "Evening," and I would say, "Evening." Once she gave me a sprig of mint from her garden. I added it to our tea and told Hannah where it came from. Hannah smiled, and that smile was like a small window opening. We kept photos in a wooden box on the shelf. Some were old family pictures. Some were of Rose, small and precious. We did not frame them. It felt too sharp to see them all the time. But now and then, on a quiet afternoon, Hannah would open the box and take out one picture. She would set it on the table and sit with it a while. I would sit too. We did not need words. I noticed that I had started to count time in a new way. Before, after, and now. Before was bright and easy, after was heavy and slow. Now was something else. Now was the way the light hit the table in the mornings. Now was the taste of lemon on fish, the feel of clean sheets, the sound of keys on the counter. Now was us living. Mark fixed things. It was how he cared. He oiled the squeaky hinge on the bathroom door. He leveled the kitchen table with a folded paper under one leg. He kept the car clean. Sometimes I would find him in the garage, standing still, holding a screwdriver and not using it. I would say, "Tea?" And he would say, "Yes, please," and we would walk back inside together. Hannah knitted at night. She made scarves in quiet colors. Her hands moved without her eyes, and the yarn made a soft sound like the word hush. When a scarf was done, she would fold it and place it in a basket. "For winter," she would say. It helped to make something warm in a world that could be so cold. Every now and then we had a small argument with no heat. It might be about the grocery list or the laundry. I would say, "I thought you wanted eggs," and Hannah would say, "Not this week." We were never really speaking about eggs. We were speaking about the space that sat between us, kind and careful and sometimes too quiet. Then one of us would say, "I'm tired," and the other would say, "Me too," and we would let it be. 2 years is a long time and not long at all. We marked the days with simple rituals. Friday tea with biscuits at 4. Saturday pancakes even if we were not hungry. Sunday phone calls to my sister, short and steady. We kept going because that is what people do, and because we loved each other in a way that held us up even when our knees were weak. Sometimes, when the house settled at night, I would lie in bed and listen to the silence. I would hear a car far away or the hum of the refrigerator, and I would think about who we used to be. I would think about what I had not said. I would think about the baby monitor in the drawer, quiet as a stone, waiting without complaint. It felt like a promise I had made to no one and everyone. I would sleep, and sometimes I would dream of waves. We did not know then that the monitor still had work to do. We did not know the path it would open for us. We thought we were doing our best by keeping the door closed and the noise low. We thought grief preferred darkness and would leave us alone if we kept our voices soft. But love finds a way to speak, even when we do not. Life now, before that night with the monitor, was careful and gentle. The halls held a hush that was not empty, just cautious. We were a family speaking around the center of our pain, circling it like a sleeping animal we did not want to wake. We were steady. We were kind. We were waiting for something, though we did not have a name for it yet. The first night began at 12:07 a.m. I remember the red numbers on the clock and the way the house felt like it was holding its breath. I woke because of a soft sound, a breath of static, a thread of voice that crossed the room. Then I heard words that pressed all the air out of me. "Hi, my sweet girl." It was Hannah's voice. I knew it from the first syllable, the way she let the word "hi" drop like a pebble in water. I sat up slowly. The old baby monitor was on my nightstand, and the little green light had found a way to glow again. I reached out and touched it with the tip of my finger, as if it might be warm. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cool. I walked to the door and opened it an inch, then another. The hall was dark except for a thin line of light at the bottom of the nursery door. It looked like a small sunrise trapped under wood. I did not go closer. My feet knew the boards that would creak, and I did not want to make a sound. I stood very still and listened. The monitor's soft crackle filled my room like distant rain. Hannah whispered something I could not catch, and then I heard almost silence, as if she was breathing words and holding them back. My throat went tight. I shut my eyes and swallowed. I wanted to knock to open, to gather her up and say, "I am here." But I also knew this was a fragile moment, thin as a shell. I closed my door. I went back to bed and pulled the blanket to my chin. I lay on my side and placed the monitor near my pillow. My hand rested beside it. Tears came and I did not fight them. They moved across my face in quiet lines and I let them go. I breathed slow, long breaths the way I had taught Hannah when she was in labor, in and out like waves. The house held its hush. In the morning, I made tea. I moved gently, as if the cups might shatter if I rushed. Hannah came into the kitchen with her hair in a soft knot and her eyes tired. She sat and wrapped her hands around her mug like she needed to borrow its warmth. She looked at me and smiled in a small way. "Work call later," she said. Her voice was steady, a daytime voice. I nodded. "Do you want toast?" I asked. She said, "Maybe in a bit." We spoke about the weather and the groceries. We did not speak about the night. Mark came in and kissed the top of Hannah's head. He picked up his lunch bag and stood there a moment. "Traffic looks bad," he said, looking at his phone and not really seeing it. "Be safe," I said. He nodded. He looked at the hall and then looked away. The kettle clicked back to silence. All day I moved through the rooms and felt a quiet hum under my skin. I folded towels. I checked the plant in the window. I wiped the table that was already clean. The monitor sat back in my drawer, but it felt heavy there, like a paperweight on something I could not read. That night I went to bed early but did not sleep. The house changed after 10. It loosened its shoulders and settled. The clock hands slid forward. When the crackle came, I felt it before I heard it. The little green light woke like an eye. "Did you see the moon? It was big tonight." Hannah's voice was soft and almost smiling. The words floated into my room and then into me. I could see her in the nursery, though I did not open the door. I could picture her near the rocker, maybe near the crib, speaking to the space that held our girl. I clutched the blanket and pressed it to my chest. My heart hurt and also softened at the same time. I know this is grief, I thought. This is love trying to find a path. I did not fear it. I felt protective, like a mother standing between a child and the wind. The next day, when the house emptied for a little while, I took the monitor out of the drawer. I turned the dial and listened. It gave a soft hiss. I clicked through the channels, the way Mark had shown me once. It crackled, then quieted, then crackled again. In the far distance, I thought I heard a voice, and then it was gone. For a moment, I let my mind offer me simple answers. Maybe it was a neighbor's monitor. Maybe the old device picked up overlapping signals. Maybe my ears were playing tricks. But then I remembered the way she paused between words. I remembered the small laugh at the end of a sentence. It was Hannah. My bones knew it. I set the monitor back in the drawer and closed it with care. I walked to the kitchen and stood at the sink. Outside, a sparrow hopped on the fence. The day went on, as days do, even when they carry something heavy. I chopped vegetables for soup. I listened for the door to open. That evening, after dinner, the small frictions began to show again. They had been there before, and now they stepped closer. Mark took his plate to the sink and kept his back to us. He cleared his throat. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe next month we can pack the nursery. Not everything, just a start." Hannah's hand paused on the edge of the table. She did not look at him right away. "Not yet," she said. Her voice was soft, the kind you use when something is tender. Then she added, "Please." The word hung in the air like a small bell. I felt myself between them, loving them both. I knew Mark meant to help the way he knew how. I knew Hannah was not ready. My chest felt too small for my heart. "Tea," I said, because tea was a language we all spoke. I stood up and went to the kettle. The water did not judge. When the cups were on the table, we sat and held them as if they could anchor us. No one spoke for a while. I watched the steam rise and disappear. I remembered when Hannah was born and I first learned that love and fear live together. I found myself holding that truth again. Later, when Mark had gone to the garage and the house was a little quieter, I tried to offer a small bridge. "Sometimes we talk to what we miss," I said to Hannah, wiping a clean counter with a clean cloth. My voice was low and steady. I did not look at her right away. "Do you?" she asked. The question was simple, but it opened many doors. I kept my eyes on the cloth. "Yes," I said. That was all. She nodded. "Okay," she said. She put the towel on the rack and we stood there a moment, side by side, our shoulders almost touching. I thought about my own old loss and the way I had sealed it inside me like a letter. I thought about the years that had passed without me saying a word to my own daughter. The right moment still felt far away. I went to the sink and rinsed the cloth. The water ran clear and then not clear and then clear again. The next afternoon, Mrs. Patel came by with another lemon cake. She stood at the door and I waved her in. She sat at our table and we had tea. We did not rush. She touched the edge of her cup with one finger, gentle and present. Her presence felt like a warm blanket laid over a cold place. She looked at me as if she had known me a long time. "Grief loves quiet rooms. It will sit until you invite it to speak," she said. Her words landed in me and made a small, steady place. I nodded. "I see," I said. We sipped our tea and let that sentence be enough. When she left, the kitchen kept her warmth for a while. When I cut a piece of the cake later, the lemon smell rose up and surprised me. It reminded me of a tiny onesie with small yellow stars that we had folded on a bright morning. I rested my hand on the counter and let the memory pass through. I did not speak it aloud. Not yet. Memory is a shy guest. It deserves care. One afternoon, I was looking for clothespins in the laundry room and opened a drawer I did not often open. There, folded under a dish towel, was a tiny dress. It was pale with a small flower at the collar. I lifted it and held it to my face. It felt like a whisper. I pressed it to my cheek and shut my eyes. No one saw me. No one needed to. It was a moment between me and the small piece of fabric and the love it carried. After a minute, I folded it and placed it back in the drawer exactly as I had found it. I stood a while and held the edge of the counter with both hands. Then I went to put water on for tea. On the third night, the monitor woke me again. I did not plan to listen, but I did. The sound came like a thread through a crack in the door. "I bought oranges today. You loved yellow." Hannah's voice was warm and tired. I could see, in my mind, her hand touching the edge of the crib as if it could answer back. I turned on my side and faced the wall. I did not want to make noise. I tried to be a bowl that could hold this without spilling it. Every part of me ached, but not in a way that crushed me. It was an ache that said, "This is love. Stay." On the fourth night, the words were fewer. "You would be too now," Hannah whispered. The sentence wandered into my room and sat beside me. I counted months without meaning to. I pictured a small girl in a yellow sweater, but I stopped myself before the image grew too sharp. It hurt to imagine, and it hurt not to imagine. I lay there and let both be true. In the morning, I thought about telling Mark. The idea came and went like a tide. I watched him at the sink, rinsing a bowl and not really seeing the water. His shoulders rounded forward, as if he was trying to make himself small. I dried my hands and stepped toward him and then stepped back. I was afraid that if I spoke, something in him might break open in a way he could not manage yet. That evening, the air between us all felt a little tighter, as if the house had shrunk. We ate in almost silence. Then Mark put down his fork and looked up. "We can't live like this forever," he said. His voice was flat, not angry, just worn. Hannah looked at her plate. "I'm trying," she said. The words sounded like a person climbing a hill in the rain. I set my napkin on my lap and felt the urge to join them on that hill. "Maybe we can make a plan together," I said. My voice was gentle. The room went quiet and stayed that way. Silence settled in the room like dust in a beam of light. No plan came that night. We did the dishes. We wiped the table. We turned off the lights and then turned one back on because it felt too dark. We stood near each other without touching. Then we all went to our separate rooms and laid down and stared into the near dark. On the weekend, when the house was slow and the light was kind, I found Hannah near the end of the hall. She stood with her shoulder against the wall. I joined her and matched my breathing to hers before I spoke. "Hannah, love," I said, "do you go to the nursery at night?" She kept her eyes on the floor. "Sometimes I can't sleep," she said. I nodded. "I hear you sometimes," I said. The words were a small door I opened at my own pace. She closed her eyes and then opened them. "I didn't mean for anyone to hear," she said. Her voice did not ask for anything. It just admitted a truth. "I know," I said. We stood there a while. We did not say more because more was not needed in that moment. I reached out and pressed my fingers to her wrist for a second, a small touch of company. Then I asked, "Tea?" and she said, "Yes." We went to the kitchen and let the kettle do the talking. After that, I went to my room and opened the nightstand drawer. I looked at the monitor as if it might speak back. I traced the seam with my thumb. It had sat in that drawer for 2 years, and still the channel between the two parts of it had not fully closed. The base must still be in the nursery, plugged in behind the dresser, a green light waiting in the dark. I thought about going into the nursery and looking. I thought about finding the cord and unplugging it and giving us all sleep. But it did not feel right. Not yet. This small channel had become a bridge, and though it frightened me a little, it also felt like a hand reaching across water. I closed the drawer. That night the voice came again, but not as words. It came as a song, slow and tender. "You are my sunshine," Hannah sang. Her voice was low, the way mine had always been, with a catch on the second line like a hiccup in the heart. I covered my mouth with my hand. I closed my eyes and let 2 tears slip down and make a path to my pillow. I lay still so I would not disturb the shape of the sound. It filled the room like a soft light. I was back in a rocking chair decades ago, with a dark window and a soft weight in my arms. I was also here now, listening to my grown daughter speak to love with music. The 2 times met and did not collide. They rested together. The next few days were strained in small ways. Mark worked late and texted that he had a last-minute project. I knew that he meant it, and also that the office was easier than home right now. He came in after 9 and stood at the sink as if it could answer him. "I don't know how to help you," he said one night, not to Hannah, not to me, but to the room. I stood a few feet away, drying a dish. "You're here," I said. He nodded, but the words did not seem to reach the place that hurt. Hannah stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, not defensive, just cold. I wanted to hold both of their hands in mine and braid our fingers together. I made tea instead. I decided to test the monitor in the daytime again, to calm my mind or to confirm it. When the house was quiet, I took it out and turned the dial to the channel I thought was ours. The speaker gave a breath of static, and then a thin line of sound that might have been the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I turned the dial a notch and heard a faint voice, then nothing, then the chirp of a bird from somewhere else. Analog things have a way of wandering. I thought of how, years ago, I once heard a neighbor's baby cry through a cheaper monitor while I was watering the plants, as if the air had momentarily become a hallway. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened. After a minute, I turned it off. I was both comforted and not. One night much later, I woke to a sound that split me open. It was a baby's cry, high and bright and unmistakable. It came through the monitor like a clear line. I sat up so fast that I made a noise. My heart knocked hard in my chest. The sound rose and then fell and then stopped. My breath did not. I got up and went to the hall. The nursery door was closed, and the space under it was dark. I stood with my hand against the wall and waited. Nothing. The house was so quiet that my own breathing sounded loud. I went back to my bed very slowly, as if I was carrying something fragile that could not be seen. I did not sleep for a long time. In the morning, I found Mrs. Patel at the mailbox. She was in her garden gloves, holding a few letters and a packet of seeds. "Good morning," she said. I said, "Morning." Then I said, "Do you know if anyone nearby has a new baby?" My voice shook just a little. She nodded. "2 streets over, the Leas. They had a little one last month," she said. She tilted her head. "Sometimes the monitors cross channels. We used to hear a neighbor's music through ours." She smiled in that gentle way that tells you the world is still ordinary, even when your heart is not. I thanked her. I held the railing of the porch for a moment before I went back inside. Her words calmed me and stung me at the same time. Of course the world had other Bobbies. Of course signals crossed. Grief mixes with static. It takes what it hears and fills in what it misses. My mind had reached for the sound it most wanted and also feared. I made tea and stood by the window and let that truth sit with me. The nights became a pattern I could not deny. The monitor went quiet for a day or two and then would speak again, the way a tide goes out and returns. Hannah's words were not many. They were short and simple and tender. "Good night, sweet girl. It was windy today. I wish you were here." I kept my part in this small, secret ritual without meaning to. I was the listener who did not answer aloud. I held the words like warm stones in my hands. Sometimes I pressed my palm to the monitor as if I could press comfort back through it. Sometimes I whispered to the dark, "I hear you." It felt like a prayer. Days carried on. We lived around the edges of this new night world. We went to the store and bought bread and apples. We paid the bills. We watched a friend's child's birthday video and smiled, careful and sincere, because love for other people's joy can live beside our own sadness. Then, after dishes, the evening would fold itself over us again. Mark stayed later at work, but when he was home, he fixed things more, as if he could repair a feeling with a wrench. He replaced the screw on a cabinet door. He tightened the railing on the steps. He changed a light bulb that had been flickering for weeks. He stood at the sink some nights and stared through the window into the dark yard, his reflection just a shade. Once I found him in the garage with the radio on low. He was standing still, a screwdriver in his hand, not using it. "Do you want company?" I asked from the doorway. He shook his head. "I'm okay," he said. He wasn't not fully, but he was upright. Sometimes that is enough for a day. Hannah moved through the house like someone trying not to wake a sleeping bird. Her steps were careful. She ate toast standing up, then sat down and had tea. She folded blankets and unfolded them again. At night she would knit, the soft click of needles like rain on a porch. Sometimes she looked down the hall and then looked back at her yarn. One evening, while we were washing dishes, she said, "I might start running again." I said, "That could be good." She said, "I get restless at night." I nodded. We did not say more. The faucet made a steady noise and the plates shone clean. I wrote little things down in a small notebook that I kept in a drawer by the stove. Not every night, not every word, just pieces. "Moon, yellow, you would be too." It helped to put them somewhere that was not only inside me. It felt like making a small map of where we had been. Sometimes, late in the evening, before the whisper of the monitor came, I would walk to the end of the hall. I would stand by the wall and listen to the house. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere a car door closed and then another opened. The nursery door was, as it always was, closed with its small line of light or dark. I did not touch the handle. Mark avoided the hall at night. I would hear his steps come up from the living room, pause, and then turn back. He did not do it on purpose. His body made the choice for him. I did not call him back. I did not call anyone anywhere. We all made our slow circles and met again in the kitchen. The night of the lullaby returned to me many times after it happened. It came back while I peeled carrots, while I folded napkins, while I stood in the yard and looked at the corner where we would someday plant a bush. The sound of Hannah's voice singing felt like a key pressed into my hand. I did not know yet which door it would unlock. I wanted to tell Hannah then that I had heard her, not to stop her, but to stand beside her. I wanted to tell Mark too, to let him know that we were already in the middle of a thing we could not ignore. But each time I opened my mouth, my throat closed. I think now I was waiting for the right kind of quiet, the kind that holds and does not hide. A few days later, I found a small teething ring in a bowl that also held loose screws and paper clips. It was pale green and smooth. I did not know how it got there. I held it for a long moment, the way you hold a bird's feather you find on the ground. Then I placed it in a deeper drawer, one that held the things we were not ready to see every day, and I closed it gently. On a weekday evening, we had one of those thin conversations that are not arguments but not easy either. Mark asked Hannah about a bill. Hannah said she had paid it. Mark said he would double-check. Hannah said, "It's fine." Mark said, "Okay." The words were not about the bill. They were about a house that had not found its language yet. "Let me make a list," I said, trying to offer a small net to catch things before they fell. We sat at the table and I wrote, Wednesday, trash. Thursday, groceries. Friday, call electrician. It was simple, normal. The pen moved and made ink trails on paper, and for 10 minutes we felt like we were managing something. Then the list was done and we were just us again. One night the monitor stayed quiet and I felt a strange mix of relief and loss. I fell asleep and dreamed of a train that never reached its station. The next night it spoke again. "Good night, my love," Hannah said. The words were light and true. I answered in my head, "Good night." My reply went nowhere and everywhere. It surprised me how protective I felt. Not only of Hannah, but of the space itself, the little room at the end of the hall that had become a place of private seeing. I did not want anyone to rush it or clean it out or make it behave. I wanted to set a chair in front of the door like a guard and say, "This is where love lives in the dark. Be kind." One morning, after a night of half sleep and listening, I found a small strand of yellow yarn on the floor near the kitchen table. It must have fallen from Hannah's knitting. I picked it up and wrapped it around my finger like a ribbon. It made a circle and then a smaller circle. I put it in my pocket and carried it with me all day, a small sun. Days stretched and folded back and the pattern held. The monitor, the whisper, the line of light under the door. The careful days and the tender nights. The small frictions and the long silences. We were like weather, clouds coming, clouds going, a wind that changed and stayed the same. One late afternoon, sky gray and low, I stood at the sink and watched Mark in the yard. He was checking the fence, pushing against the boards with his hand, as if testing the world for strength. Hannah came up beside me and looked out too. "He wants to fix everything," she said. I said, "He wants to keep us safe." We stood there and watched him lean his shoulder into the wood. By then, I had started to whisper into my pillow before I slept. "Help us," I said to the night. "Help me be wise." I do not know who I was speaking to, God, the air, the memory of my own mother. The words made a small ring around me, like the way you circle a candle with your hands on a windy day. Mrs. Patel's sentence kept returning to me, as if it had written itself on the kitchen wall. "Grief loves quiet rooms. It will sit until you invite it to speak." I turned it over and over. I thought about what an invitation looks like. Sometimes it is a cup of tea set down between two people. Sometimes it is a question asked softly. Sometimes it is a hand on a wrist for 2 seconds and then not there anymore. One evening, as the sun dropped and shadows lengthened across the floor, I stood at the end of the hall again. The nursery door was closed and a thin line of light showed at the bottom. I could almost hear the soft scratch of fabric, a footstep, then stillness. I placed my palm flat against the wall. It felt cool. I whispered, "I'm here," to no one and everyone. I knew the turning would come, though I did not know when. The nights had begun to build on themselves, each whisper a small step on a staircase we had not agreed to climb. The house felt full of unsaid things that were not heavy in a cruel way, but heavy like a quilt that keeps you warm and still. I held onto the rail I could find, tea, soft words, the kindness of neighbors, the thin green light on a small machine, and I waited. The storm came in slow, like a heavy animal settling on the roof. Rain tapped first, then pressed, then pounded. The wind moved the trees and made a sound like a long sigh. Lightning drew thin white lines across the walls. The house felt small and brave. I tried to sleep, but the air had a pulse. The power flickered and the clock blinked and then held. The old baby monitor on my nightstand was quiet, then it woke. It crackled to life like a match, a breath, a soft hiss, a voice. "I can't do this anymore, I'm so tired." It was Hannah. Her voice was strained, as if every word had weight. I felt my body go still. I sat up and listened with my whole face, my whole self. Another flicker in the power. The room dimmed and then returned. The monitor hummed on battery, faithful and small. Thunder rolled far and near at the same time. I could not stay in bed. I swung my legs over the side. The floor was cool. I put my hand on the wall and stood. The hallway was dark except for light from the storm that slipped in through the curtains. I walked to the end, finding the places where the boards would not creak. The nursery door was closed. No thin line of light showed at the bottom tonight. It was a closed mouth. I stood and breathed. I lifted my hand and knocked softly. "Hannah, it's me," I said. My voice barely moved the air. For a moment there was only rain and the small click of the vent. She did not answer. I tried the handle. It turned without resistance. The door opened an inch, then two. The room was warm from her presence. The air held the smell of clean cotton and soft powder. Lightning flashed, and the pale curtains glowed for a second like the memory of daytime. Hannah sat on the floor beside the rocker. Her back was to the crib. A small blanket lay folded neatly in her lap, edges lined up, corners pressed flat. She held it with both hands in the careful way you hold a story. She wasn't pretending it was the baby. It was simply the only thing she could hold. I closed the door behind me with a slow hand. I lowered myself to the floor across from her. My knees protested, and I let them. The storm spoke against the window in a steady voice. We sat in the gray light, our breathing the only rhythm beside the rain. "I've been hearing you at night," I said. The words were simple and soft. I did not reach for her yet. I let the sentence stand and make its own place. "I didn't mean for you to," she said. Her eyes stayed on the blanket. Her thumbs smoothed one edge as if calming a small wave. She looked tired all the way to the bones. "I know," I said. "I just want you to know you're not alone in here." I put one hand on the floor between us. The wood was warm from her body heat. I felt it move through my palm. She broke very gently. There was no loud sound. Her face changed the way a window fogs when the room grows warm. Her shoulders rounded a little and she leaned forward as if a string had been cut. She leaned into me as if she was small again. I opened my arms and she found the space. Her forehead touched my shoulder. I felt the small tremors of hidden crying, the kind that has been held back too long. I did not speak. I let my hand rest on the back of her head the way I had when she was a child and had woken from a bad dream. "I fell asleep that day," she said. The words came through cloth and breath. "I woke up and it was too late." She drew a shuddering inhale and held it, then let it go. "It was my job to keep her safe." "Oh, my love," I said. I kept my voice steady, not because I was not crying, but because I wanted my voice to be a place she could rest. "The doctors told us. It wasn't your fault." I pressed my cheek to her hair. "I know what they said," she whispered. "My heart doesn't know." The storm filled in the space after her words and washed them gently. Thunder moved like furniture in the sky. We stayed like that for a long moment. My hand moved in small circles, the way you calm a baby, the way you calm a grown woman who is still someone's child. The blanket lay between us, folded neat, a small square of order in a world that had been turned. "Can I tell you something I should have told you a long time ago?" I said. I waited for her to nod. When she did, I felt a door inside me open with a quiet click. Years ago, I was expecting. I lost the baby. She lifted her head and looked at me. The room lit with lightning and then dimmed again. Mom, I didn't know, she said. The words were simple and they held surprise and a kind of tender grief for me. I never found the words to tell you, I said. I buried it inside me and kept going. I looked down at my hands. They were older hands now, but they remembered. I wish I had spoken sooner. She reached up and touched my face. It was the softest touch. I'm sorry you held that alone, she said. Her voice was very small. I'm sorry I didn't know. You were a child, I said. It was my job to tell you, and my fear was louder then. I thought silence would keep us safe. I breathed in and took the smell of cotton and rain into me. I was wrong. We sat on the floor and let the storm talk. The window shook a little in its frame and then settled. The rocking chair creaked once in the wind and then went still. The blanket in her lap was the color of butter. I noticed the stitching on the edge and remembered the day we had chosen it. Sometimes I come in here and sit, Hannah said. I don't always talk, I just listen to the room. She looked around at the soft lamp, unplugged now, and the dresser with its quiet drawers. It feels like she might be near me when it's dark. I understand, I said. Sometimes at night I listen to your voice through the monitor. I don't answer out loud, but I hear you. I felt my own eyes fill and did not blink them dry. She smiled in a way that hurt and soothed. The monitor, she said. I forgot it could still work. She looked toward the corner where the bass used to sit. I never thought about the signal. It found me, I said. When the house was quiet, it brought your words to my bed. I took one of her hands in both of mine. I think it was showing me what you carry when we are asleep. A sound in the hall made us both look up. The door was open 2 inches. Someone stood there, a shape against the dark. Mark, I said. The door opened another inch. Mark's face appeared in the thin light. He looked careful, like a man stepping on stones in a river. I heard voices, he said. He did not step in right away. I didn't want to interrupt. Come, I said. I moved my hand toward the empty space on the floor. He came in slowly, as if the room had rules he did not know. He sat near us, knees drawn up, hands clasped together. No one spoke for a bit. The storm filled the silence, and it did not feel empty. It felt like a blanket draped over a chair, soft and useful. I watched Mark's face. He looked tired in a way I had not seen before. Not work tired, heart tired. I don't know what to say, he whispered. The words were a confession, not a failure. He looked at Hannah and then at the blanket. His eyes pooled and then steadied. You don't have to say much, I said. I put a hand on his shoulder and felt the weight there. He nodded. I listened to videos of her in the garage, he said. The words came out in one piece. I couldn't bear to do it inside the house. I didn't want to make you cry. He kept his eyes on the floor. Hannah turned her body toward him. She moved closer on her knees, blanket still in her lap. I want to know when you listen, she said. Her voice was clear and gentle. I want to cry with you. Mark made a sound, a soft thing like a person who has been holding their breath for a very long time. He put his hands to his face and rubbed hard, the way a man does when he is trying to wake up from something that is not sleep. Then he let his hands fall and looked at her. I thought I was protecting you, he said. The words wobbled a little. I thought if I kept it in the garage, the house would be safe. He shook his head. The house hasn't felt safe anyway. We can share it, Hannah said. She reached for his hand. He gave it to her. Their fingers threaded together like a habit remembered. The 3 of us sat and let the truth settle in the room around us. The silence changed shape. It was no longer the kind that keeps words from touching. It was the kind that holds them up. It was no longer empty. It was full of Rose and our love and the small, honest things we had hidden because we were afraid of breaking. Thunder rolled again, and the window made its small, rattling sound. I counted to 4 as it moved away, then counted to 4 as the rain returned. The storm did not frighten me. It sounded like something doing its work. I hear her sometimes when I walk by the door, Mark said. He leaned back against the wall and let his head rest. Not her voice. I mean, I hear the house remember. Does that make sense? It does, I said. It made perfect sense. Some rooms hold echoes, some rooms hold breath. We had made this room a place where both could live. Hannah looked at the crib without looking inside it. I change the blanket sometimes, she said. I fold it and unfold it. It helps my hands. She looked back at him. I didn't want to tell you because I thought you would say it was time to pack it all up. I suggested next month, he said. He grimaced a little. I thought I was being careful. Maybe I was just trying to move without asking if we were ready. We can decide together, I said. Not tonight, but soon. We can choose how to keep what we keep and how to hold what we let go. The words felt like a small path laid in the grass. Hannah touched the edge of the blanket again and then placed it between us on the floor. It made a small square on the wood. She placed her hand on top of it, palm down, and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she lifted her hand and let it be. I talk to her at night, she said. I tell her small things, what we ate, what the sky looked like, that I saw a yellow cup at the store and it made me think of her. She took a breath. I was afraid if I stopped talking, I would lose more. You don't have to stop, I said. You don't have to stop at all. But maybe we can talk in the day, too. Maybe we can let the love be daytime love sometimes. The word love made the air warmer. Mark nodded. I want to hear about the yellow cup, he said. A small smile pushed at one corner of his mouth and then faded. I want to hear everything. A small flash of light cut across the room and made the pale curtains white. The thunder came a beat later, softer now, as if it had moved down the street. The rain kept going, steady and sure. I think we need help, Hannah said. She looked at me. I think I do. I don't know how to do nights anymore. Her honesty felt like a candle being lit in the middle of the floor. We can ask for help, I said. We can call someone who knows how to hold this with us. I thought of the doctor who had given us numbers. I thought of the neighbor who had spoken of grief as a guest. We can call tomorrow. Mark leaned forward and placed his elbows on his knees. Please, he said. It was one word and it held a great distance traveled. I don't want to keep guessing wrong. We'll make a list in the morning, I said. We'll call the people who were given to us. We'll find someone kind and steady. I looked at both of them. We won't do nights like this alone anymore. Hannah nodded. Tomorrow, she said. The word felt sturdy. It did not feel like a promise made too fast. It felt like a step we could actually take. We breathed together, the three of us, the way you do at the end of a long walk. In and out, in and out. The room adjusted to the new shape of us. The monitor in my room was probably still whispering to no one now, the circuit open, the air softly moving. It had done its work. Do you want to put the kettle on? I asked after a while. The question helped us stand up. It pointed us back toward the ordinary. It offered our hands something to do that had nothing to do with choosing or letting go. Yes, Hannah said. She stood and wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Mark stood too and reached out to help me up. His hand was warm and sure. He did not let go right away. We left the blanket on the floor where it was. It did not need to be moved yet. Hannah turned off the base of the monitor, which sat half-hidden behind the small table. The tiny green light went dark, and the room felt no less full. We stepped out into the hall and pulled the door almost closed, then left it open a small inch. The kitchen was dim and friendly. The power flickered once more and then held. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The flame came up blue, then gold. The sound of water heating began, a rise in pitch that always made me feel safer. We stood around the island and leaned on our elbows. Rain ran down the windows in clear rivers. I took cups from the shelf and set them on the counter. I placed honey on a small plate and a wedge of lemon in a dish. Doing felt like thinking with my hands. I used to come in here when you were a baby, I said to Hannah, pointing with my chin toward the hall. I would sit at the door when you were sleeping and listen to you breathe. I smiled a little. I was sure the world would stop if I looked away. She smiled back, a small, tired smile. You never told me that, she said. The kettle began to sing quietly. I like knowing it now. Mark opened the jar of honey and held the spoon as if he was reading it. I used to sing to her in the car, he said. I never sang in my life before, not really. He looked up at us. I smiled while I sang so she wouldn't hear if I was sad. "You can sing here," Hannah said. Her voice was steady. "Anytime, you can cry here too." She reached out and touched his arm. He looked at her hand and then at her face and nodded. We poured tea and stood in the soft light. The first sip was hot and sweet. It moved through me and made my hands warm. The rain eased a bit, like someone had turned down a knob. "I think tomorrow we can call Dr. Lee first," I said. "She gave us a list. Maybe she can point us to someone who feels right." I did not say counselor yet. The word was big and fine. I wanted to place it gently when it arrived. "I'll take the morning off," Mark said. He sounded like a man who had decided to step onto a boat. "We should do it together." He looked at Hannah, asking without pressing. She nodded. "We can make a small plan," I said. "Just a simple one, a call, a time, a name." I set my cup down. I felt the steadiness that comes when words are said out loud and they do not break anything. We drank our tea and did not try to finish the night. We let it be what it was, a soft-walled room with rain tapping at the windows. When we were ready, we washed the cups and set them upside down on the towel to dry. The normal sounds were like prayer. At the edge of sleep, my mind went back to the room, to the blanket, to Hannah's breath on my shoulder when she said the words she had carried like stones. I thought of how she had said, "My heart doesn't know." I thought of how we would teach our hearts together. Before we turned off the stove light and left the kitchen, I looked at the hallway. It was dark, but it did not feel like it was hiding anything new. It felt like a place where a light could easily be turned on. "If either of you wakes in the night and needs company," I said, "turn on the hall light. I will come." Hannah looked at me and then at Mark and back at me. "Okay," she said. Mark said, "Okay." It was not a rule. It was an invitation, a small open door. We went to our rooms. I stood by my bed and listened to the last run of the rain. I opened the drawer and touched the monitor with my fingers. It was quiet and dark. I did not put it away farther. I left the drawer open just a little. As I lay down, I felt the house breathe with me. The storm moved down the street and away. The air in the room cooled and settled. My body softened into the mattress as if it had finally found a way to live in its own skin again. In the morning, the world looked washed. The trees were green with a kind of bold honesty. The street smelled like wet stone and new beginnings. I made coffee and then tea and set out 3 cups. Hannah came in with her hair in a loose braid. Mark followed, already in a soft shirt, not his work one. "We'll call after 9, I said. "We'll sit right here and do it." My voice had a thread of strength that felt new. Hannah took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you for last night," she said to us both. Her eyes shone. I was so tired, I didn't know how to open my mouth. "You did," I said. "You did." I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. Mark placed his hand over both of ours and pressed gently. We did not look toward the hall. We did not need to. The room at the end of it was not a secret anymore. It was a place we could walk to together whenever we needed, and a place we could leave together when it was time. After breakfast, we took the list from the drawer and set it on the table. Hannah read out the numbers, slow and steady. Mark held the phone. I wrote down a few words. We were doing something small and right. Before the first call, Hannah met my eyes. "Mom," she said, "thank you for telling me about your baby." Her mouth trembled and then held. "I will keep that story safe." "Thank you for holding it," I said. The kettle clicked off by itself and we ignored it. We had more important heat moving through the room. As Mark dialed, I looked at the window. The sky was pale and faithful. A bird landed on the fence and shook its wings as if to say, "Here I am. Here you are." I looked back at my family. We were 3 people in a kitchen, tired and brave, and the day was waiting for us with an open hand. The night before had not solved us. It had not made the ache vanish. It had done something better. It had told the truth out loud. It had made our silence into a place we could sit together. It had turned the old monitor's whisper into a path. We agreed, with tea on our breath and hope in our pockets, that we would ask for help and let someone steady stand with us. We agreed to light the hall if the dark grew heavy. We agreed not to do the hard hours alone anymore. I could see Rose everywhere and nowhere, in the curve of the spoon, in the fold of the towel, in the way Hannah held her cup with both hands, in the way Mark leaned a little into the table as if holding it steady with his body. She was not a ghost in our house. She was love, present and tender and carried by each of us. When the phone began to ring, we breathed together again. The sound was small and real. It pulled the future a step closer to us. We did not know the name of the person we would meet yet. We only knew we were ready to be met. I thought of the storm and the way the rain had said what it needed to say and then moved on. I thought of the blanket on the floor, still folded, waiting. I thought of the thin voice that had traveled across a channel and called me to the door. There are moments when a family turns, quiet and sure, like a compass finding north. Last night was such a moment. It did not shout. It whispered. It used a small machine and a big sky and a folded blanket to bring us into the same room. We stood there, the three of us, ready to step forward and to help. Ready to be taught by someone who knew how to be gentle and brave at the same time. Ready to learn how to make space for love and pain to sit side by side without fighting. The wind moved a little outside. The kettle, forgotten, stayed warm. The hallway waited with its simple light. The day said yes, and we answered yes too. We met Mara on a Thursday morning. The waiting room was small and kind, with 2 chairs and a plant that looked like it had been watered by careful hands. The window showed the top of a maple tree, and the light through the leaves made moving shadows on the wall. Hannah sat beside me, quiet and straight. Mark held a paper cup of water and did not drink. Mara opened the door and called our names in a voice that felt like warm cloth. She was not much older than Hannah, and not much younger than me. She wore a soft sweater and comfortable shoes, and her eyes were the kind that stay with you because they look at you as if you are already known. She showed us in and sat in a low chair. We took the couch, the 3 of us in a line, knees close. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know it takes courage to walk into a room like this." She did not ask us to tell the whole story right away. She asked simple questions, the kind you can answer without breaking. "How are your nights? How is your eating? How do you take care of yourselves when the ache rises?" Hannah spoke first and her voice was steady. "The nights are the hardest," she said. "I talk to my baby." She looked at Mara as if asking permission. Mara nodded. "It is okay to keep talking to the ones you love," she said. "Love does not end." She spoke the words like a calm truth, not a lesson. "We have a name for this in my work, continuing bonds. It means your relationship with Rose is still real. It is different now, but it is not gone." Mark's hands went still on his knees. "So it's not wrong," he said, "that I listened to her videos." His voice was hopeful and frightened at the same time. "It's not wrong," Mara said. "It's love finding a way to speak. People will tell you to move on. I won't say that. I will say we move with, we carry, we make room." She paused and let the words land. "What we will do together is give your love a place to live in your days so your nights can rest." I felt something inside me unclench. It was as if a tight knot had finally found water. I nodded. "We need that," I said. "We've been circling around it in the dark." Myra smiled, not big, just enough. "Rituals help," she said. "Not to forget, but to honor. Not to close the door, but to open a window." She looked at each of us. "Would you be willing to choose a few small things that feel right for your family? We'll start there." We nodded. Hannah's hands were folded, but I could see her fingers move a little as if trying on the idea. Mark leaned forward a bit, listening with his whole body. "A memory shelf," Mara offered. "One small place in your home where Rose's presence can be welcome and clear. A photo, perhaps, a soft toy, a candle you can light when you wish. The shelf says, 'We see you, you live with us still.'" She waited. Hannah's eyes filled, not in a painful way, but in a way that looked like relief. "Yes," she said, "I know the place." She took a breath. "By the window in the living room where we sit in the afternoon." "Beautiful," Mara said. "Another ritual that helps is a letter box. When the ache is too heavy to carry in your chest, you can write to her. A sentence, a page, a single word. Fold it, place it in the box. She gets the letter. You get a little space to breathe." Mark looked at me and then at Hannah. "I could write on my phone and then copy it," he said. "My words come crooked at first." He gave a small smile, shy and brave. "That is perfect," Mara said. And a third idea I have seen: be kind, choose a day each month, call it what you like. She looked at Hannah. Rose Day, perhaps, no agenda, just time together. A walk, a meal, a simple thing she would have loved if she had grown up here, with the understanding that what she would have loved is what you love. Because she was made of you. I felt the truth of that move through the room. Hannah pressed her hand to her heart. Rose Day, she said. The word felt like a warm stone in my hand. Mara did not ask us to tackle the biggest thing right away, but she did glance in the direction of it. We can talk about the nursery, she said gently. There is no hurry. The room can still be a place of love. If you choose to open the windows one day, let the air move. If you choose to sort, do it in short bursts. Then stop. Cry, make tea, continue when you can. Mark let out a breath he had been holding for months. Short bursts, he said. I can do that. He looked at Hannah. We can do that. We left Mara's office with a small list in my pocket and a sense that the air around us had changed. It felt like stepping into sunlight after a long tunnel, not because the darkness had gone, but because a hand had taken hours in it. That afternoon, we cleared a small space on the living room wall near the window. The light there was gentle, not too bright, not too dim. We dusted the shelf and placed a cotton cloth on it. I brought the frame we had kept in the box, the one with the photo of Rose in a hat with a soft brim. Her eyes were closed in the picture. Her cheeks were round and perfect. Hannah touched the edge of the frame with one finger. We placed a small stuffed rabbit beside the frame. It was gray and soft, with one ear that leaned. Mark found a candle in the drawer, white and simple. He set it on the shelf, then moved it a little, then looked at us for approval, like a man learning a new dance. We nodded. It was right. We stood together and looked at the shelf. We did not speak for a moment. The shelf did not make the room sad. It made the room honest. Hannah lit the candle with a long match. The flame was small and steady. Hello, sweet girl, she said. It was not a ceremony. It was a hello. The next day, we found a wooden box at the thrift store. It had a smooth lid and a small latch, no lock. We wiped it with a damp cloth and let it dry in the sun. Hannah lined it with a piece of soft fabric from one of her scarves. We placed it on the table and set a pen beside it. I wrote the first letter. I did not plan the words. I wrote about the mint in the garden and the way the hallway light made a small pool on the floor. I wrote that I missed the sound of little socks in the dryer. I folded the paper and placed it in the box. I pressed the lid down gently. Hannah wrote later that night. She sat at the table with her head bent, hair loose around her face. She wrote 3 lines and then held the paper to her chest before she folded it. Mark wrote the next morning. He wrote 2 sentences and 1 sketch, a small circle with a smile inside it. He laughed at himself and placed it in the box with care. We wrote when we needed to. Sometimes I wrote only a word. Sun, I wrote once. Wind, another time. We did not read each other's letters unless we asked, and even then often we said, not today. The box did not ask questions. It held what we gave it. On the first Rose Day, we did not plan. We woke and let the day introduce itself. The sky was clear and kind. I made pancakes with extra butter because I remembered how the smell of butter in the pan had made Rose's arms move in her first weeks, a small reflex like a bird testing its wings. We went for a walk by the small lake in the park. We did not rush. We noticed a duck with a feather out of place. We noticed a child in a yellow raincoat even though it was not raining. We sat on a bench and shared a hot chocolate with 2 straws. If she were here, she would taste the whipped cream and make a face, Hannah said. Mark smiled. She would love the ducks, he said. I nodded. She would love the way we sit close, I said. In the afternoon, we made a simple meal with colors we knew she would have liked if she had learned to ask. Soft carrots, rice, a salad with oranges and mint. We set a small plate on the shelf by the candle, not as an offering, but as a way to say, we remember you when we eat. We ate slowly. The day moved like a song you hum without words. A few days later, we opened the windows in the nursery. The curtains lifted like breath. The room smelled of dust and fabric and the faint sweetness that lingered in the wood. Sunlight fell in squares on the floor. We stood in the doorway together the first time. Then we stepped in, one at a time, like entering a pool. We did not try to do it all at once. We did a corner, then we stopped. We cried. We made tea. We came back the next day. We kept our feet under us. I laundered a tiny quilt we had used across the foot of the crib. It had small yellow flowers stitched along the edge. I filled the basin with warm water and a drop of gentle soap. I pressed the cloth under and lifted it out and pressed it under again. The water turned a little gray from dust and time. I rinsed and pressed and rinsed until the water ran clear. I hung the quilt on the line in the sun. It looked like a flag for something tender and true. Hannah took a small newborn hat from the top drawer of the dresser. It was the soft pink one, the one with a knot at the top like a little sprout. She held it in both hands for a long breath. Then she placed it in the memory box on the shelf in the living room. She did not rush. She did not explain. The box sighed as it received it. Mark found the squeaky hinge on the crib. He oiled it with a few drops and moved the side up and down. The sound changed from a high cry to a soft whisper. He sat in the rocking chair afterward, testing it with a careful push. He closed his eyes. "I was afraid to hear it move," he said. His voice was small and brave. "I thought the sound would break me." "It sounds like a boat now," I said. "Safe and slow." We stood near him, not touching, just close enough for him to know we were there. He opened his eyes and looked at the window. The curtains kept breathing in and out like a living thing. We moved through the room in short bursts for a few weeks. 10 minutes, then out. 5 minutes, then sit on the floor and think of nothing. We made 2 boxes, one to keep, one to give. The give box was small. The keep box was large. We were not ashamed of that. We were honest about love. One Saturday, we planted a rose bush in the yard near the back fence. The day was soft and bright, with a wind that did not push. Mrs. Patel brought a thermos of chai and a tin of small biscuits. Our neighbor from across the street brought a pot of lavender and a shy smile. No one knocked. They drifted in the gate like birds that already knew the way. Mark dug the hole. He dug it a little wider than the root ball, like the directions said. The soil smelled like rain, even though it had not rained. Hannah held the rose bush in her arms, the way you hold something that has weight and promise. She set it down on the grass while Mark widened the edges. I held the hose and made a puddle in the bottom of the hole. The water shone. We placed the rose bush in and moved the soil back with our hands, not shovels, as if we needed to feel the dirt to know it was true. Our fingers were dark and a little cold. Mrs. Patel handed us cups of tea, and the steam rose like small prayers. No speeches, just the soil, the roots, the water, the hands. We stood around the new plant and looked at it. The leaves moved a little as the wind considered them. A small thorn caught the light and looked like a drop of glass. "Grow well," I said, not loud. "You are welcome here." Hannah touched a leaf and smiled. Mark placed his hand flat on the ground beside the stem for a second, as if to steady it. We started our new ritual for nights that were heavy. If someone was awake and hurting at midnight, we turned on the hall light and made tea. It was simple. No questions, no explanations. Just the light and the kettle and 2 or 3 hands around warm cups. The first time it was Hannah. I opened my eyes and saw the soft square of light on my door. I stood, pulled on my sweater, and met her in the kitchen. We did not need to speak. I put water on. She sat at the table with her arms around herself. When the tea was ready, I set her cup in front of her. "Thank you," she said. We drank. We breathed. After a while, we went back to bed. Another night, it was Mark. I saw the light and found him standing at the sink, looking out into the dark yard. "Tea?" I asked. "Please," he said. We stood side by side and watched our reflections in the glass. He said, "I listened to one of her videos tonight." I said, "I'm glad you told me." That was enough. Sometimes I woke and turned on the light for myself. I made tea and stood with my hand on the counter. The house felt awake with me. I could hear the soft breath of people I loved in the rooms nearby. The light made a small circle in the dark, and within that circle, we were safe. The baby monitor had done its work. It had brought us to the door. It had called us into the room and into each other's arms. Its green light no longer glowed. One afternoon, we decided together to retire it with love. We placed it on the table, both pieces, the receiver from my drawer, the base from the nursery. We wrapped them in a soft cloth, one of the muslin squares we used to use for burping and wiping tears. Hannah tied the cloth with a ribbon from the memory box, pale and simple. We placed the bundle in a small wooden crate with other precious things, a hospital bracelet, a card with a tiny handprint, the first hat Rose ever wore. We did not hide the crate away. We slid it onto the bottom shelf of the bookcase where it would be safe and quiet. "Thank you," I said to the monitor, not as a joke, but as sincere gratitude. "Thank you for what you held without judgment." Hannah touched the cloth. Mark nodded. As the weeks went by, Mark found the courage to pack the last box in the nursery. It took time. He moved toward it and away from it, like a man stepping close to a cold lake and back again. On a Saturday morning, he sat on the floor with the box open and a stack of small clothes beside him. He folded one tiny shirt and placed it in the box, then paused and closed his eyes. He lifted a book and held it for a long time, then set it down gently. Hannah sat beside him and placed her hand on his knee. She did not press or pat. She just rested her hand there, warm and sure. "You can stop any time," she said. He nodded. Then he picked up the next small thing and the next. When the box was filled, he taped it slowly, the sound loud in the quiet room. He wrote "keep" on the top with a black marker. His handwriting looked like a person learning to write with his other hand. He exhaled. Down the hall, the kettle clicked off by itself. The house was kind. Mara met with us every week at first, then every 2 weeks. We learned to sit on her couch and let words come without forcing them. We talked about how grief had moved into our house and how we were making it a good tenant with rules and kindness. She taught us language that felt natural on our tongues. "Heavy day," we would say, or "light morning," or "my heart is loud today." She also told us about a small support group that met on Tuesday evenings in a church basement that smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. "It's quiet," she said. "People speak plainly. You can come and go as you need. If you cry, it is normal." We went. The first night we sat near the door. There were 6 other people there. A man with a baseball cap he turned in his hands. A woman with gray hair who wore a sweater with tiny pearls. Another couple young as Hannah and Mark, their fingers tangled together like vines. We spoke in simple sentences. "We lost our daughter," Hannah said. Her voice trembled only once. "Her name is Rose." The names we heard in that room were like lanterns. People cried without hiding their faces. No one turned away. Tissues were passed hand to hand like bread. A man said, "I kept her room the same for a year. Then I moved one picture and I didn't die." A woman said, "I made soup every day for a month because soup understands." Someone else said, "I laughed at a joke and my guilt was loud. Then my love was louder." We learned to say things like that too. We went back the next week and the week after. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes we only listened. The room did not demand anything from us. When we left, our steps were a little steadier. We brought that steadiness home and set it on the table beside the candle. Life began to shift in quiet ways. Laughter returned to dinner sometimes, not big, but real. Mark started to tell small stories from his day, and his eyes reached mine again. Hannah made a joke about the neighbor's cat that kept staring at our rosebush like it could make it grow faster. I laughed, and the laughter did not feel like a betrayal. It felt like a breath I had been holding finally let go. One weekend, we took a drive to the ocean. We had talked about it and never gone. Now we packed water and sandwiches and a blanket and got in the car. The sky was gray and the water the color of slate. The wind was steady but not cruel. We walked along the shore with our hands in our pockets and our shoulders closed. We brought a small bag of rose petals from the yard. We stood near the waterline and let the wind kiss our faces. "We love you, Rose," we said together. Mark opened the bag and let the petals go. They lifted and scattered and touched the water like small boats. Some came back to our feet. Some went out. None of it felt wrong. We stood there and breathed. I felt the pull of the tide and the pull of my heart and recognized them as the same. We did not speak for a while. We sat on the blanket and ate our sandwiches. The gulls watched us without shame. I felt tired and clean at the same time. A few months later, we adopted a small rescue dog. He had a dark dot over one eye like a smudge from a pencil, so we called him Dot. He was not a solution. He was a presence. He reminded us that life still taps at the door and waits patiently to be let in. Dot learned the house fast. He found the sunny square on the kitchen floor where the warmth gathers in the morning. He learned the sound of the cookie jar and the exact tone of Hannah's voice when she said his name. He slept under the table while we had tea. He never went into the nursery unless one of us did, and then he would sit at the threshold as if asking, "Do you want me to come further?" At night, Dot's small feet clicked on the floor as he moved from room to room like a little guardian. On the first Rose Day after we brought him home, he sat by the memory shelf with his head tilted, as if the candle's flame held a story he wanted to hear. He made us smile without effort. Joy did not knock. It walked in and laid down at our feet like a dog. We kept our rituals simple, the shelf with the photo and the rabbit and the candle, the letter box that grew a little heavier each month and felt like a good kind of weight, Rose Day, which changed shape every time we met it. Sometimes it was a drive, sometimes it was pancakes and a movie, sometimes it was sitting in the yard and watching light move on leaves. We also kept the night ritual. The hall light at midnight meant, "Come!" Over time, we did not need it as often, but when we did, it was there. Once, months later, I woke to the light and found Hannah and Mark already in the kitchen, sitting side by side with their mugs. They reached for my hands, one on each side, and I stood between them and felt like a bridge that had finally found its river. Mara taught us more words for our days. She told us we were allowed to have a good morning and a bad afternoon and an okay evening, all in one day. She told us we were allowed to change our minds. She told us we were allowed to laugh in the same breath as a tear. "You are not doing it wrong," she said over and over. "You are doing it." The house learned these truths too. It sighed less. The windows opened more. We played music sometimes while we cooked. Not loud, old songs and new ones. Sometimes we danced a little, not as a show, but as a way to remind our bodies that they could move in ways that did not only carry pain. One evening, Mark brought home sunflowers from the market without deciding to. He put them in a jar on the table and looked embarrassed, like a man who wasn't sure if he was allowed to bring Bright into a room that had been so careful. "They're beautiful," Hannah said. Her voice was steady and kind. We set the jar near the shelf. The flowers nodded toward the candle as if saying hello. I noticed that the nights began to change. I still woke sometimes at midnight, listening. I still felt for the drawer where the monitor had lived, but my hand found a book instead, or the edge of the blanket, and that was enough. I would lie there and hear the house settling, the soft roll of the dishwasher, the small exhale of the heater. If the rain fell, I listened to it without waiting for a voice inside it. Sometimes, through the thin wall, I heard Mark turn in bed and then be still. Sometimes I heard Hannah get up for water and then return, the bed creaking as she lay back down, Dot lifting his head and then sighing. The hallway light glowed once in a while, an invitation I took when I needed it and left when I did not. I walked down the hall without holding my breath. I opened the nursery door sometimes and stood in the soft light of late afternoon and did not feel the floor tilt. The room was different now, and the same. The crib was disassembled and wrapped in a blanket, leaning in the closet. The rocker stayed by the window, because sitting in it felt like prayer. The dresser held only a few things. The rest were in boxes we had labeled in plain words and placed carefully on a shelf. I took the tiny quilt from the linen closet and unfolded it on the rocker one day. I sat and let my fingers trace the stitches. The house was quiet in a good way. I closed my eyes and spoke a sentence in the room without fear. "We love you," I said. It sounded true without breaking me. We did not stop missing her. We did not stop wishing. That is not what healing is to me. Healing is the way we light a candle and write a letter and make tea and turn on a hall light and bring home a dog. Healing is the way we let laughter sit at the table again, right beside the sorrow, and tell both of them they can stay. On a late afternoon in autumn, when the sky was the color of peaches and the air had a little bite, we stood in the yard by the rose bush. It had grown well. New shoots pushed out and made small shadows on the fence. A few blooms were open, simple and beautiful. Hannah leaned in to smell one and smiled. "She would have reached for it," she said, her eyes warm. Mark nodded. "We would have shown her the thorns," he said, "and taught her to be careful." I said, "She would have taught us to slow down and look." We stood there, the three of us, and Dot lay at our feet with his head on his paws, his dot like a wink. Inside, the candle on the shelf was not lit. It did not need to be. The photo of Rose did not have to shine for her to be present. She was present in the way we stood, in the way we breathed, in the care we took with the world because of her. That night I woke just for a moment and I listened. The house was a body I knew well. It stretched and settled. It made small night sounds like a person turning over in sleep. I felt for grief and found it, not as a sharp rock, but as a river bed worn smooth by water. I turned on my side and pulled the blanket up. In the hall, our little light glowed, ready as always. I thought of the first night the monitor had spoken, and how frightened and full I had felt. I thought of the storm, the blanket on the floor, the way Hannah had leaned into me and said the words she had been carrying like heavy stones. I thought of Mark's voice in the doorway, cracked open and honest. I thought of Mara's calm room and the way the word with had changed everything. I breathed in and breathed out. The candle would be lit tomorrow morning. We would drink tea. We would write a letter if our hands asked for it. Maybe Dot would bring one of my slippers into the kitchen and drop it at my feet like a gift. Maybe the rose bush would open one more bloom before the cold came. Love had not ended. It had learned to live with us in new ways. It had a shelf and a box and a day and a light and a small dog to guard it. It had a window and a chair and a rose bush by the fence. It had 3 people who had found a way to keep speaking. It had a quiet house that knew how to hold what mattered. I closed my eyes and rested. The night was not empty. It was enough. Love, I have learned, is a thread that does not break. It stretches when life pulls hard. It knots and loosens, and then it finds new ways to hold. In our house, that thread now runs through a small shelf, a box of letters, a rose bush by the fence, and a hallway light that glows like a friendly star at midnight. The old baby monitor taught me something I did not expect. Sometimes the heart finds a channel when the mouth cannot. A voice travels across a quiet line and reaches the one who is able to listen. If you hear a voice you thought was gone, perhaps it is not there to frighten you. Perhaps it is an invitation to listen first, and then to speak. Grief, I see now, is not a problem to solve. It is a place we visit with care. We do not live there all the time, and we do not slam the door shut. We bring a chair, we bring tea, we bring truth, and we sit. We do not move on. We move forward together. To you who are listening in your own quiet room, I want to speak gently and plain. If you are awake at midnight, holding a quiet ache, you are not strange. You are human. Please make tea. Turn on a small light in your hallway or by your bed. Tell someone you trust, I am hurting. Let the love you carry speak, even if it is only a few words, even if it is only a whisper. I think back to the storm night, to the blanket on the floor, to Hannah leaning into me as if she was small again, and to Mark's voice cracking open at the door. That night changed the shape of our silence. We did not become different people. We became the same people, but more honest. We retired the monitor with love, but the real channels stayed open inside us. As for me, an older mother who once kept too many rooms locked in her chest, I learned to open a door and let my own story breathe. I told my daughter about the baby I lost long ago, and the words made space for both of us. I wish I had spoken sooner, but I am grateful I spoke at all. If you carry an old quiet, I hope you find one safe person and one gentle hour to set it down. These days, our house rests easier. The shelf holds Rose's picture and her small rabbit. The letter box grows heavier in a good way. The rose bush leans into the wind and blooms when it is ready. At night, Dot makes his slow rounds from room to room, and sometimes the hallway light glows, and we know what it means. Come sit, no questions, warm cups, steady breath. If you ever hear a voice in the dark, your own, your child, your memories, answer with kindness. Write a letter, light a candle, ask for help. Call the neighbor who brings lemon cake. Call the person with the calm voice. Sit in a circle where people cry without shame and say names like lanterns. Let others share the weight because weights are meant to be shared. Thank you for walking through this tender story with me, step by step, breath by breath. Your listening is a kind of company, and I feel it. Wherever you are, may you find one small way to honor the love that still lives in you. May you find one person who can sit at your table and hold a warm cup while you speak your heart. I cannot promise that the ache will go away. I would not make such a promise. But I can promise this. Peace can come in small pieces, one steady breath, one honest word, one gentle night at a time. If you wake at midnight, I will be there in spirit, putting on the kettle, turning on a small light, and making room for love to speak.